where we are now in terms of how we work and play and live is evolving.
No industries last forever. There's always going to be change.
This is historic. This is the historic peak at this point.
I feel like office is where we were 15 years ago with retail. Retail didn't die, it evolved.
They're able to connect their data with the data that we have here at Moody's.
It's much more than just about a building or real estate.
This is far from being finished. The story has many chapters left.
$400 million in a decade. This was the value lost at 1740 Broadway. Look around. Midtown Manhattan, 8 a.m., peak commuting time. Certainly not apocalyptic, but not what it once was. It's not just skyscrapers and office, retail, a vital part of any 24-hour city. Many of these businesses depend on office employees. Times Square, a vibrant New York landmark, but the vast majority of people here are tourists. Important, but this city can't function on tourists alone. A glimpse into the future here at 270 Park, a stone's throw from Grand Central Station. But is a redevelopment of this scale and commitment to office work enough to breathe life back into this historic neighborhood?
Remote work, hybrid work, it's been a challenge for the office market, a considerable challenge, but it's also part of a larger scale evolution within office where even pre-pandemic, hybrid remote work was growing. And this was already putting some pressure, downward pressure on a lot of those older, less desirable office buildings in less desirable neighborhoods. And so ultimately, what's going on now is a continuation, an acceleration of what's been going on for 15 or 20 years.
Office tenants change over time. And in the US, that has been most dramatic since the end of World War II. We saw the prosperity of the 1960s, 1970s for corporate America, resulting in placing their headquarters in city centers for the regions of manufacturing and production. So we see these major areas becoming the workplace centers. When you look at the office buildings of that time, you have the corporate headquarters of the consumer companies taking up the prime places along Park Avenue in New York City, Chicago, Atlanta. These entities were at the pinnacle of economic activity and they could pay the highest rents or build for themselves the highest quality of office building. The inflation of the 1970s, quickly followed by soaring interest rates, pulled back on the activities of those companies and therefore their ability to pay rent and their need for workplace space. So we had a downturn. However, that downturn was absolutely necessary to accommodate what was rising as the new emerging economic activity of city centers, and that was financial services. The new model of companies like Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch required the best space, but weren't able to afford the rents previously paid by corporate America. Now they were. Of course, oversupply in the real estate market resulted in a downturn in the late 80s, early 90s. Even the financial services companies, who had been very productive during that time, experienced a pullback. Therefore, we had once again a lowering of prices, a lowering of rental rates, and we had an open market for a new entrant. The media and technology companies came in. What we are seeing now is the downturn in rental rates that are necessary to accommodate the new entrants of economic activity in our urban centres. Who will they be? It's hard to predict, but it's bound to be exciting.
Well, the signs of a healthy office market are usually you know how things are going to be valued and priced, and you know what your tenancy of a building will be, what your vacancy of a building will be. That's kind of a normal. You have a lot of certainty around what the value and the rents of offices are. Right now, we're in a situation where that's not frequently true. We have long-term leases in office where they burn off roughly about 5 to 7 years on average. And so we have to wait for a lot of these leases to burn off to figure out what tenants are going to do. In a lot of cases, they don't know themselves yet. They don't know what the future of work actually looks like for them. So they don't know what their space demands are going to be. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, and that makes it very difficult for it to be a healthy market.
So at Moody's, we help our customers kind of navigate these very choppy waters, right? From a commercial real estate specific perspective, but also from many other perspectives, economic, demographic, both now, but also in the future. That's something that one of our customers told me a couple of months ago that said when they're looking at their book, they want to see around corners. They want to see the risk before it becomes obvious. And we have a lot of information and content that we've brought together in a way that makes it digestible, understandable, and actionable. We give our clients and our customers scenarios and stories and narratives, and then let them coalesce around the way they see the future coming to get ahead of the potential default, get ahead of the potential borrower distress, get ahead of the potential continued value loss.
In terms of the vacancy rates, which is a main metric for commercial real estate, we're hovering around 20%. So 1 out of every 5 buildings, if you want to think about it at that scale, right now is vacant. This is historic. This is the historic peak at this point. Now, does that remain? Is there continued stress from a vacancy perspective? We think so. It kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which was this trial and error period, where companies are going to be making only temporary decisions for now. And some that are continuing to pay, but their physical occupancy of employees is down. And when that lease expires, that's the moment where we could see further stress in the office sector.
The interconnection between office and other components of commercial real estate are very tied at the hip. If you have less people coming into a downtown area, local businesses are going to potentially suffer. However, that's starting to evolve right now. You're seeing cities offer incentives for landlords and developers to change the way they approach this. Where we are now in terms of how we work and play and live is evolving. So depending on where you are in the country, you're seeing this interconnection between developers and city council people work together to sort of change that dynamic. So it does take time for urban planning. You have to think about transportation. So you are going to see some changes. Those cities are going to attempt to change that dynamic.
The enthusiasm for city living ebbs and flows. For thousands of years, cities have been created, expanded, and enjoyed as centers for not only efficient commercial activity, but also really efficient social activity. To pronounce that cities will not be thriving is to ignore what we've done over the many, many years of human civilization.